Your soulmate is shaking in total shock right now. They lost all control after finding out you are. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Your soulmate wakes up expecting another familiar day, believing nothing unusual is about to happen. They move through their routine almost automatically, making breakfast, checking messages, and preparing for the responsibilities waiting ahead. Everything feels predictable until one unexpected conversation changes the atmosphere completely. Someone casually mentions your name while sharing a story, followed by one surprising piece of information about you, information your soulmate had never considered before. It isn't dramatic because of what it proves. It's dramatic because of how it changes the way they interpret the past. In that instant, they stop what they're doing. The cup in their hand remains suspended for a moment as their thoughts race through memories they believed they had already understood. Suddenly, conversations from months ago sound different in their memory. Small acts of kindness they once overlooked seem far more meaningful. Moments they dismissed as ordinary begin fitting together in ways they had never noticed before. Their heart begins beating faster, not because they have discovered some impossible secret, but because perspective has the power to transform familiar memories. They realize how often people misunderstand one another simply because they never possess the complete picture. What once appeared to be distance may have been uncertainty. What once seemed like silence may have been hesitation. What once looked like indifference may simply have been someone struggling to find the right words. That realization alone is enough to leave them sitting quietly, unable to continue with the morning exactly as it began. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. As the day continues, your soulmate finds it almost impossible to concentrate on ordinary tasks. Every quiet moment invites another memory back into their thoughts. They remember simple conversations that seemed insignificant at the time. They remember shared laughter that now carries greater emotional weight. They remember opportunities when honest communication might have changed everything if only both people had been brave enough to speak openly. Looking back, they understand how easily assumptions can replace understanding when people stop asking thoughtful questions. They begin wondering how many conclusions they reached without having all the information. They realize that fear often encourages people to fill empty spaces with their own interpretations instead of seeking clarity through conversation. Rather than feeling angry, your soulmate feels humbled. They recognize that much of life's unnecessary pain grows not from a lack of care but from misunderstandings left unexplored. This realization encourages them to become curious instead of defensive. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen?" they begin asking, "What can I learn from it?" That single change in perspective quietly transforms the rest of their day. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to listen more carefully. Every conversation becomes a reminder that understanding requires patience. Every relationship begins to appear less fragile and more worthy of intentional care. They no longer believe meaningful connections survive through hope alone. They survive through honesty, empathy, gratitude, and the willingness to communicate even when conversations feel uncomfortable. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Later that afternoon, while checking the time before leaving work, they happen to notice 11:11 displayed on a nearby clock. During an ordinary purchase, the receipt ends with 222, and while driving home they casually notice 444 on a street address. Many people enjoy treating repeating numbers like these as reminders to pause, breathe, and become more mindful. Whether viewed as meaningful coincidences or simply personal prompts to reflect, your soulmate welcomes each moment as an opportunity to ask themselves better questions. Are they becoming someone who truly listens before reaching conclusions? Do they express appreciation often enough? Have they allowed busy schedules to replace meaningful conversations with the people who matter most? Instead of searching those moments for certainty about tomorrow, they use them to become more intentional today. They begin sending thoughtful messages they had postponed, thanking people whose encouragement had quietly shaped their life, and slowing down long enough to appreciate ordinary kindness. The more they do, the clearer one truth becomes. Genuine transformation rarely begins with one extraordinary event. It begins through countless ordinary decisions repeated consistently over time. A patient conversation. A sincere apology. A thoughtful question. A moment of gratitude spoken aloud before the opportunity disappears. Those quiet choices gradually reshape not only relationships but also the person making them. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Perhaps you have experienced a similar shift in perspective. Maybe one unexpected piece of information caused you to reconsider a relationship, a conversation, or an assumption you once believed was completely accurate. Such moments often remind us that we rarely know the full story of another person's experiences. They invite humility instead of certainty and compassion instead of judgment. Unknown to you, your soulmate is arriving at those same conclusions. They are no longer interested in defending old assumptions. They want to understand more deeply, communicate more honestly, and become someone whose actions consistently reflect kindness, patience, and integrity. Just as they begin believing they have finally processed everything they learned that day, they receive one final unexpected message. Attached is an old photograph they have not seen in years. At first it appears ordinary, but as they look more closely, they notice one small detail hidden in the background that they had completely missed before, a detail so unexpected that it instantly changes the way they understand every memory connected to you, leaving them frozen in complete silence as an even deeper truth begins to unfold. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Your soulmate couldn't stop staring at the old photograph. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a forgotten snapshot from another chapter of life, but the longer they looked, the more one tiny detail drew their attention. Hidden in the background was something they had completely overlooked years ago, not a supernatural sign, not a dramatic revelation, but a simple reminder of how incomplete our understanding can be when we only remember part of a story. That overlooked detail suddenly connected several memories they had always kept separate. Conversations that once felt confusing now made a little more sense. Quiet moments they had dismissed as insignificant suddenly carried a different emotional meaning. They realized that what had shaken them most was not discovering something extraordinary about you, but recognizing how easily assumptions can reshape reality when people never pause to ask honest questions. They set the photograph down on the table and closed their eyes for a moment, allowing themselves to sit with that uncomfortable truth instead of immediately searching for explanations. They admitted to themselves that there had been times when they assumed they understood another person's intentions without ever giving them the opportunity to explain. There had been moments when silence felt easier than vulnerability, when waiting seemed wiser than speaking, and when fear quietly disguised itself as caution. Looking back now, they understood that many of the emotional walls they had built were not created by certainty but by unanswered questions. The real shock was not what they had learned about you. The real shock was recognizing how much of the story they had unknowingly written themselves. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, your soulmate carried that photograph with them, not because it contained magical answers but because it reminded them how perspective can change everything. As they walked through familiar streets, ordinary moments suddenly invited deeper reflection. They watched strangers holding doors open for one another, friends laughing over coffee, parents patiently listening to children tell enthusiastic stories, and they realized how often genuine connection is built through simple acts that rarely receive attention. They thought about the conversations they had rushed through because work demanded their focus, the messages they intended to answer but postponed until they were forgotten, and the times they assumed people already knew how much they appreciated them. Those memories did not leave them overwhelmed with guilt. Instead, they inspired gratitude for the opportunity to learn while there was still time to live differently. They began asking themselves new questions. Had they become so focused on protecting themselves from disappointment that they had unintentionally distanced themselves from meaningful conversations? Had they confused emotional self-protection with emotional maturity? Most importantly, were they willing to become someone who chose understanding before assumption? Those questions remained with them long after the afternoon ended, quietly reshaping the way they viewed every relationship in their life. They realized that personal growth is not about pretending the past never happened. It is about allowing yesterday's experiences to make tomorrow's choices wiser. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. As evening approached, your soulmate noticed familiar moments that encouraged quiet reflection. While checking the time, they happened to see 11:11 displayed on a digital clock. Later, a receipt unexpectedly ended with 222, and before returning home they noticed 444 on a nearby building. Many people see repeating numbers like these as reminders to pause, slow down, and become more mindful. Whether viewed as meaningful coincidences or simply personal prompts for reflection, your soulmate chose to let each moment redirect their attention toward what truly mattered. Rather than searching for certainty about the future, they focused on the present. They reached out to an old friend simply to ask how they were doing. They thanked a colleague whose quiet support had made difficult days easier. They apologized for a misunderstanding they had allowed to linger for too long. None of those actions were dramatic, yet each one reminded them that meaningful relationships are strengthened through consistency rather than grand gestures. They understood that trust grows through reliability, empathy, patience, and honest communication practiced repeatedly over time. Every small choice reinforced the person they wanted to become. Little by little, the shock they had experienced earlier in the day transformed into clarity. They realized they could not control how every story unfolded, but they could choose the values that guided their next chapter. That understanding brought a peace deeper than any certainty about what might happen tomorrow. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Perhaps you've had a similar experience, when one forgotten photograph, one unexpected conversation, or one overlooked detail completely changed how you viewed the past. Those moments often remind us that life is more complex than first impressions and that compassion grows when we recognize how much we still have to learn about one another. Unknown to you, your soulmate had reached that same place of understanding. They no longer wanted fear, pride, or assumptions to influence the relationships that mattered most. They wanted every future conversation to be shaped by curiosity, respect, gratitude, and honesty. As they carefully placed the old photograph back into its envelope, they believed the day had finally given them every answer they needed. But just before closing it, another folded piece of paper slipped onto the floor. Curious, they unfolded it and discovered a short handwritten note they had never noticed before. The first line contained a single question that immediately caught their attention. If you had one more opportunity to speak from the heart, what would you refuse to leave unsaid? Reading those words, they realized the greatest challenge was no longer understanding the past. The greatest challenge was deciding what they would choose to do next, and for the first time, they knew they could no longer hide from that decision. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Your soulmate folded the handwritten note with careful hands, but the question written across it refused to leave their mind. If you had one more opportunity to speak from the heart, what would you refuse to leave unsaid? They carried those words with them throughout the evening, replaying them over and over until they realized there was no answer hidden inside the note itself. The answer had to come from within. For too long they had convinced themselves that time would eventually solve everything. They believed that enough distance would somehow erase unanswered questions, soften difficult memories, and make complicated emotions disappear on their own. Instead, they discovered that avoided conversations rarely lose their importance. They simply become heavier to carry. Sitting quietly by the window as the last light of the day faded into evening, they admitted something they had never fully accepted before. They had not been waiting for the right moment. They had been waiting to feel completely fearless, and that day had never arrived. Then another thought quietly replaced it. Perhaps courage was never about waiting until fear disappeared. Perhaps courage meant choosing honesty even while uncertainty remained. That single idea changed everything. Instead of wondering how another person might respond, they began focusing on the only thing they could truly control, the sincerity of their own actions. They realized they wanted their words to reflect gratitude instead of regret, understanding instead of assumption, and kindness instead of silence. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. The following morning, your soulmate made a decision that surprised even themselves. Rather than rehearsing every possible conversation in their mind, they chose to begin with something much simpler. They reached out respectfully, not expecting immediate answers or perfect outcomes, but hoping only to communicate honestly. Before sending a message, they paused to ask themselves one final question: am I speaking to prove a point, or am I speaking to build understanding? That question changed the tone of everything they wrote. They removed unnecessary explanations. They let go of the desire to defend every past decision. Instead, they focused on expressing appreciation, acknowledging misunderstandings, and taking responsibility for the moments when fear had spoken louder than honesty. When the reply finally arrived, it was not dramatic. It did not instantly solve every unanswered question or erase every difficult memory. Yet it accomplished something much more meaningful. It opened the door to a respectful conversation. They listened carefully instead of interrupting. They asked thoughtful questions instead of assuming they already knew the answers. They admitted where they could have handled situations differently and expressed genuine appreciation for perspectives they had never fully considered before. As the conversation unfolded, both people discovered that many of the emotional walls they had carried for so long were built less by reality than by assumptions left unchallenged. They realized that honest communication often reveals understanding where silence had created confusion. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. During the days that followed, your soulmate noticed small reminders encouraging them to remain present. One morning they glanced at a clock displaying 11:11. Later a receipt happened to end with 222, and before the week ended they smiled after noticing 444 on a nearby building. Many people treat repeating numbers like these as reminders to pause and reflect. Whether viewed as meaningful coincidences or simply personal prompts for mindfulness, your soulmate welcomed each moment as a gentle reminder to slow down and focus on what truly mattered. Rather than searching for predictions or certainty, they chose to let those moments encourage gratitude, patience, and intentional living. They found themselves thanking people more often, offering encouragement without waiting to be asked, and listening more attentively during everyday conversations. They realized that the most meaningful relationships are rarely transformed through one extraordinary event. Instead, they are strengthened through countless ordinary choices, keeping promises, expressing appreciation, apologizing sincerely, showing empathy, and remaining consistent even when life becomes busy. These quiet habits gradually replaced the uncertainty that had once dominated their thoughts with a deeper confidence rooted in integrity rather than outcomes. They understood that while they could never rewrite the past, they could decide what kind of person they would become because of it. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Perhaps this fictional story reminds you of moments from your own life when one conversation changed your perspective more than months of silent reflection ever could. Maybe you have discovered that genuine strength is not found in pretending mistakes never happened but in responding to them with humility, accountability, and compassion. Unknown to you, your soulmate had reached exactly that understanding. The shock they felt at the beginning of this story no longer controlled them. Instead, it had become the beginning of personal growth. They no longer wanted to hide behind unfinished explanations or postponed conversations. They wanted every future relationship to reflect honesty, patience, respect, and kindness. Yet as they ended that day's conversation and quietly set their phone aside, one final realization settled into their heart. Understanding the past had brought peace. Speaking honestly had brought healing. But one important choice still remained. A choice that would determine whether everything they had learned would become a lasting way of life or simply another lesson remembered only when the next unexpected surprise arrived. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Every meaningful story eventually reaches a moment when reflection must become action, and this fictional journey arrives at that point now. As your soulmate quietly placed the photograph, the handwritten note, and the old envelope back into the notebook, they realized that none of those objects had changed the past. What they changed was the way the past was understood. The shock they felt was never really about discovering something extraordinary about you. It came from recognizing how easily assumptions can become stronger than honest conversations when people stop asking questions and start filling the silence with their own conclusions. They understood that they had spent too much time trying to protect themselves from disappointment instead of allowing themselves to be open, curious, and sincere. Looking back, they no longer saw every misunderstanding as a failure. Instead, they saw each one as a lesson that had quietly prepared them to become more patient, more compassionate, and more willing to listen before reaching conclusions. They accepted that no one can return to yesterday and rewrite a conversation, undo a misunderstanding, or erase an opportunity that has already passed. But everyone has the ability to decide what values will guide the conversations they have tomorrow. That thought brought an unexpected sense of peace. They no longer felt trapped by regret because they understood that regret can become a valuable teacher when it inspires wiser choices instead of endless self-criticism. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. Over the following weeks, the change within your soulmate became visible through quiet habits rather than dramatic gestures. They became more intentional about making time for the people they cared about instead of assuming there would always be another opportunity. They returned messages promptly, not because they felt obligated, but because they wanted others to know their time and feelings mattered. They listened without rushing to respond, asked thoughtful questions before forming opinions, and expressed appreciation freely instead of believing it was already understood. They discovered that trust is rarely built through one unforgettable moment. It grows steadily through consistency, reliability, honesty, and kindness practiced day after day. They also learned to extend patience toward themselves. Rather than allowing past mistakes to define their identity, they treated them as reminders of how much they had grown. Every challenge became an opportunity to choose humility over pride, empathy over judgment, and communication over silence. Little by little, they noticed that the fear which once controlled so many decisions had begun to lose its influence. It wasn't because uncertainty had disappeared. It was because integrity had become stronger than uncertainty. They realized that confidence is not knowing exactly how every story will end. Confidence is trusting yourself to respond with honesty and compassion no matter what tomorrow brings. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. During this new season of growth, your soulmate continued encountering small moments that encouraged reflection. One morning they smiled after noticing 11:11 on the kitchen clock. Later that week, a receipt happened to end with 222, and while walking through town they saw 444 displayed on a building. Many people enjoy treating repeating numbers like these as reminders to pause, breathe, and become more mindful. Whether viewed as meaningful coincidences or simply personal prompts to reflect, they welcomed each one as an invitation to slow down and ask themselves a simple question: are my choices today reflecting the person I hope to become tomorrow? Instead of searching those moments for certainty or hidden predictions, they used them as opportunities to practice gratitude, patience, forgiveness, and thoughtful communication. They realized that meaningful relationships are strengthened by everyday actions, keeping promises, encouraging others, apologizing sincerely, celebrating another person's successes, and remaining present even during difficult conversations. Those ordinary habits became far more powerful than any single emotional experience because they created a life built on values rather than impulse. Every sunrise became another chance to act with greater wisdom than the day before, and every evening became an opportunity to reflect on whether their actions matched the character they wished to develop. Don't scroll. Listen carefully. This message is for you. Your heart needs to hear this right now. If this fictional story has reminded you of your own experiences, let it be an invitation to reflect instead of a prediction about what will happen next. Perhaps there is someone you appreciate but have never told. Perhaps there is a conversation that has waited long enough, or an apology that could bring peace where silence has lasted too long. Maybe there is a promise you made to yourself, to become more patient, more honest, more present, or more compassionate, that deserves another chance today. Your soulmate's shock did not come from discovering destiny or uncovering a hidden secret. It came from realizing that the greatest transformations begin when we choose understanding instead of assumption, courage instead of hesitation, and sincerity instead of silence. That choice became the true turning point of this story. As they closed the notebook one final time and placed it gently back on the shelf, they smiled, not because every question had been answered, but because they finally understood something that would guide every chapter still ahead. The future is not shaped by one surprising discovery or one unforgettable day. It is shaped by the quiet decisions we make every morning, to listen with empathy, to speak with honesty, to forgive with humility, to appreciate the people around us while we still can, and to let our actions reflect the kindness, integrity, and compassion we hope will define our lives. And with that understanding, they walked forward into a new beginning, carrying not the weight of unanswered questions, but the confidence that every thoughtful choice made today has the power to build a better tomorrow.